मेरे साथ जुड़ गए हैं सुनील दुपाले जी, मुझसे पहले पहुंच गए वो स्क्रीन पर। और हम दोनों यहाँ पहुंचे हैं आचार्य शंकर की जयंती के निमित्त, उन पर मनन चिंतन ध्यान करने के लिए। और सुनील जी और मैं दोनों कृतज्ञता के साथ स्मरण करते हैं अपने गुरु स्वामी श्री ईश्वरानंद गिरी जी महाराज का। सुनील जी, बिफोर आई ब्रिंग इट टू यू, एंड आई रिकलेक्ट मेनी ऑफ आवर फ्रेंड्स preferred for us to communicate in English. And I remember Swamiji was so good, whether it was in English or Hindi or Sanskrit. And I also recollect, Sunilji, his fascination for the etymology. So he would go into how the word originated, and then he would get into the meaning. And he was, to my mind, almost 100 or more than that percent dedicated to Acharya Shankar. Acharya Shankar, as many of our viewers would recollect, before I come to you, I just want to remember this with love, that our tradition is sustained by what Acharya Shankar gave to us in the form of structure and the Dashnami parampara of sannyasis, and of course, establishing the mathas. He coordinated, rejuvenated, brought a sense of harmony. And we will be focusing a little bit more today on Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Acharya Shankar, just the initial part, as you were mentioning earlier. And I want to request you to begin by sharing some highlights of Acharya Shankara's life for someone who is not familiar, would get an idea of what a glorious luminary he was.
Namaste, Ashok ji. Thank you for inviting me on this on your show. I would first like to start by invoking a prayer to the Acharya. Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. So, Acharya Shankara, as we were talking earlier, is one of the greatest minds of India. And the glory of Acharya Shankara is he was born at a time where there was a lot of turmoil in the country, and there was an onslaught of a lot of foreign thought, the thought that was not original to India. And also there was a lot of misunderstanding and confusion about what is the essence of the Shastras. So he was born in the state of Kerala, with a place called Kaladi, to a very, very pious couple, Shivaguru and Aryamba. So at a very young age, it is told about him. There's one shloka which sums up his life. It says, Ashtavarshe Chaturvedi, Dvadashe Sarva Shastravit, Shodashe Kritavan Bhashyam, Dvatrimsher Munirabhyagat. So at the age of 8, he became a Chaturvedi, meaning he gathered, he was a master in all the 4 Vedas. Ashtavarshe Chaturvedi, Dvadashe Sarva Shastravit. So apart from the Vedas, all the other Shastras also he studied. The Vedangas, the Puranas, everything. He became a master, and also he mastered the other darshanas. There were various other competing darshanas. So it like Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, all those were prevalent at his time. So he mastered all the Shastras when he was 12. And by the age of 16, he started writing bhashyams, because he said there is a lot of lack of clarity. So he decided to write bhashyam, commentaries on the Prasthanatrayee. You know what the Prasthanatrayee is the principal Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, and the Bhagavad Gita. And then Dvatrimsher Munirabhyagat, he departed at the age of 32. So in this short span of 32 years, he traveled whole of India on foot, by foot, some 3 or 4 times. Okay, and these are some of the things. But to me, the real genius of Acharya Shankara is in his bhashyas, commentaries.
Yeah, let me request you. of course, we cannot get into the complete life story of Acharya Shankar. One, he is considered to be the incarnation of Bhagwan Shankara himself.
Hmm.
Two, I think around when he was only 4, he had learnt all the Vedas, and he had started conducting classes, and many scholarly people were coming to attend his classes. And let me request you to share what happened while he was taking bath in the river, and one crocodile held his feet, and then what was the promise he gave to his mother? Talk to me about that particular instance.
Yeah, so he was already a scholar, like you said, you were a very scholarly person, but he was so perceptive. He saw the problems of his time. He's supposed to have lived in the around the 8th century, right? So he saw the problem of his time, and he said, if I have to solve these problems, I cannot stick to my home. I have to move out of the house. So he wanted to become a sannyasi. So obviously, if you want to become a sannyasi, first you have to get permission from your mother. His father passed away early, so he went and approached Aryamba. She outright refused. So he was waiting for an opportune moment when she would give him permission. So one day when he was bathing in that the Purna river, which flows very close to his place, very to his home in Kaladi. So when he was bathing, a crocodile caught hold of his feet. And then at that time, he called out to his mother and he said, "Mother, I'm going about to die. Will you at least now give me permission to take sannyasa?" So mother, it seemed like it was all a divine play. And the mother said, "Okay, Allah permit you to become a sannyasi." And when she gave
Yeah,
the permission,
yeah,
miraculously,
just to give a little detail, as I heard from acharyas, and so because he was already in river, so he had water in his palm, and he did sankalpa. This is how they were narrating, and it kind
yeah.
of gave me that scene almost vivid. So yeah.
So when the mother said "Eva mastu tathastu," when she said, the crocodile let go of his feet, and so then she had to let him go. So those were, it seemed like, the very very divine circumstance under which he was permitted to leave home and become a sannyasi.
Right. And Sunil, since we are talking, rather recording this conversation in 2024, and on 12th May this year, another day now universally, especially in America and other countries, Mother's Day is also being observed. So I'll take you to another instance where his compassion and his devotion to his mother manifested in the form of his. His way of making the river change its route so that Aryamba Ma doesn't need to
Did
walk
not have to
back.
walk too far to go to the river. He made a small deviation. It is said, you see, these are all what we get, all these incidents are from what are popularly called as the Shankara Digvijayams. There are many people who have written the Shankara Digvijayam. So the popular story is that he made the river to deviate from its normal course so that it flowed very close to his residence, so his mother wouldn't have to walk too far to get to the river to have her daily bath and rituals.
And mostly, while these acts, which now we refer to as miraculous acts, were performed, there are some stotras which he recited. And I think that mystical quality and his poetic acumen and all that is also a treasure for us. So his stotras are also considered as shastras by acharyas. And I'll
So
just mention few before I come back to you. So one, that Shivananda Lahiri, then this Saundarya Lahiri, then Gauri Dashakam, and Bhaja Govindam, and Upadesh Panchakam, and there are many more. But today, as you were mentioning earlier, we will get towards Brahma Sutra. But before we do that, anything else you want to mention in this context of his stotras?
no, that's what his main focus was, to give clarity as to what is the main tenet, what is the main siddhanta of our Shastra, particularly the Vedanta Shastra. During his time, there were certain people called as vrittikaras. So their idea was that you can get moksha both by karma as well as jnana. So it is called jnana karma samuchchayavada. So both are essential. So he basically he argued against that. And he took a lot from his other teacher, his main teacher called Acharya Gaudapada. There was a great Acharya who was his teacher's teacher, Govinda Bhagavatpada's teacher, Gaudapada Acharya, and he has a great work called the Mandukya Karika. So he based his entire line of thinking on that. So what was the central tenet is that for moksha, the only means is jnana devatu kaivalyaha. So that was, so he basically was arguing against this jnana karma samuchchayavada of the vrittikaras of his time.
Yeah. So Sunil, just getting into slightly the period in which we are living, most of us find it's almost very difficult or impossible to focus consistently and read some of the scriptures on which he, within a short span of 16 years, succeeded in writing such profound commentaries, bhashyas, which are still helping, so have helped generation to generation. And in addition to that, he wrote such wonderful, inspiring stotras, which in itself forms very, very much treasure-like literature for us. Now, paying respect to the limited time that we have for this conversation, and as you mentioned earlier, Prasthanatraya, which consists of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, and Brahma Sutra.
Brahma Sutra.
And Brahma Sutra is the scripture about which many Hindus also do not know much. So first tell me something about Brahma Sutra, then we will take the first few letters of Brahma Sutra, and you are studying that Bhashya these days, so we'll get that benefit. Say something about Brahma Sutra.
Brahma Sutras. Sutra is a very small aphorism, small line, which has a message. Okay, and there are 555 sutras. They are composed by Bhagavan Vedavyasa. Okay, and these sutras, they are giving, and it is like a lot of profound message in very limited words. So this sutra, so unless somebody explains what the sutra means, it's very, very, very difficult to understand what is its import. Like for instance, the very first sutra is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. So when he says Atha, so that at that very Atha, there are a lot of, it's a very loaded word. What does that Atha mean? What does it imply? There's a lot of discussion on that. So in the very introduction, Acharya says, the reason why we are writing this commentary is we want to explain what is the central message of all these sutras. And there's a lot of discussion on various topics. So the main note that is there in the Bhashya, in the introduction, is all the problems that we as a human being we face is because of one primary cause. And that one primary cause is not knowing yourself. He calls it avidya. So because of not knowing yourself, you take yourself to be something other than what you are not. And this is, I'm telling you in English what is written in Sanskrit. Eva mayam anadi ranantaha naisargiko dhyasaha mithya pratyaya nimittaha kartrutva bhoktritva pravartakaha sarvaloka pratyakshaha. So if I say this, what is it? What are you going to understand? So what he says is, this is anadi. That means this is happening from many, many births. There is no adi. You don't know from how many births you are having this problem. And this, what happens because of this problem is I don't know myself. I take myself to be something other than I am not, like the body, the mind, and all the adjuncts. And I take myself to be a doer and enjoyer. So this is the main problem, and I am going into the cycle of births and deaths. So he says, what is the solution? Asya anartha hetov prahanaya. This is a big disaster. This is anartha. This is a big problem. And to solve this problem, asya anartha hetov prahanaya atmaikatva vidya pratipattaye sarve vedantaha arabhyante. To give you the knowledge of the self, atmaikatva vidya pratipattaye, to clearly explain and delineate what is the nature of the self, the Atma. That is the goal of all the Shastras, all the Vedanta Shastras. So that is the one line I just try to explain to you. This is from his commentary on the introductory commentary. This is called Adhyasa Bhashya. So Adhyasa, not knowing yourself, you commit an error, you take yourself to be other than what you are, and then you get into the cycle of births and deaths. So that is what he is explaining in this one. So it is very, very profound. See, nobody before, I mean, of course, Gaudapada Acharya also told the same thing, but very, very in a very profound and an authentic way, he says this is the message of all the Vedantas, Vedanta Darshana, is very simply to explain to you what you are. So the message is know thyself.
I think this is the same message which continues to come to us from Bhagwan Ramar Maharshi also, and his famous question, who am I? That introspection.
Yeah, all the great masters.
Absolutely. So staying with Brahma Sutra, and you mentioned it is aphoristic. That aphoristic word in English essays for Francis Bacon also it comes. So like in one line, they'll say something which requires you to have some profound, deep thinking, and then you grasp more. Coming back to Brahma Sutra, and I haven't studied the Bhashya, but I, by the grace of Swamiji, because while we were having some special celebrations on Guru Purnima also, we were chanting all the Prasthana Traya, which means Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad, and this first chapter of Brahma Sutra. So I remember this. Athato Brahma Jigyasa Janmadasyatah Shastrayo Nitva Tattu Samanvayat Ikshatirna Shabdam. I want you to say something, if you remember, the Bhashyakar, what he says about Ikshatirna.
Ikshate, I forget that Bhashyam.
Yeah,
we will start with Athato Brahma Jigyasa.
Yes.
See, that very first sutra, the word Atha is a Mangala Vachaka. So when you say Atha, that is a very auspicious, to start something with Atha is a Mangala Vachaka. And also, when you come to that, there are, Atha also means to come to study this, you must have certain qualifications. Okay, the word Atha implies these qualifications. What are the qualifications? The four qualifications you should have: Viveka, Vairagya, Shatka Sampatti, Mumukshutva. So Viveka, Nitya Vastu Viveka, Vairagya, and extreme dispassion towards Vishayas, and the Shatka Sampatti. So all the spiritual traits that are needed, that is Shamadama, Titiksha, Uparati, Shraddha, Samadhana. And the fourth one is the intense desire for moksha, Mumukshutva. So all these qualifications are implied in the word Atha. And then you come to know what is Brahma Jigyasa. What is Brahma? What is this word? So Brahma is a very loaded word. What is this Brahma? And what does the Shastra say about this word? So the very first discussion is, we will try to know what this word Brahma is. So even this Brahma, there is a Vyakhya of it. There is a word that the way that word is defined, word is explained. So again, we have to go to the reference of the Upanishad. The Taittiriya Upanishad says that from which everything has come. Yathova imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti. That in which everything exists, and that into which everything resolves. Yat prayanti abhisham vishanti tad vijigyasasva tad brahmeti. So that you know to be Brahma, from which everything has come, in which everything exists, and into which everything resolves. So that is Brahma. In English, it's called Brahman. When you write it in English, people say it is Brahman. So this is a very, very, very detailed. So sutra by sutra he goes on to, and he also argues against all the other darshanas. Why the other darshanas are wrong. So this is a stupendous amount of work he has done. So to me, if you ask me, the greatness of Acharya Shankara, it's very well that people adore him, offer puja, do this Ashtotara and do all that. That's all very good. To me, even better is to study his commentaries, his bhashyas. That is the real service, to study and to be able to understand, grasp, and teach that to others. So that is the real crux of, if you understand that, that will be a greater service to Acharya Shankara, in my opinion.
So, taking your opinion and probably inspired by Acharya Shankar, I offer you an opportunity and a challenge both. So, let us do a series on Brahma Sutra where we pick one word or as it goes with the flow. So, for today, the second one is Athato Brahma Jigyasa Janma Dyasya Yata. What is that meaning?
The Janmadhyasya Yata means that from which all this Janma Adi. So you see all the things that you see, the birth of things, the birth of people, the birth of this, all that you see, that from which where everything has arisen. So that also is Brahman. So I told you, right, that that mantra from the Taittiriya Upanishad, Yatova imani bhutani jayante. So that from which everything has come, know that to be Brahma. So that is the second sutra, and we can go into the details of that gradually. You don't want to what do you call, load everything in one. Just to keep it interesting, and so to to entice the people into the content of this.
Absolutely.
I just gave you a very cursory, because when you actually go into the bhashyas, so he also explains what it should not be understood as. So if you want to understand something as it is, you should also take the erroneous meanings and to negate those erroneous meanings. You should be able to do that. So the commentaries also does that. So if you take Brahma as something else, what will be the problem? So all this, there's a lot of detailed explanation.
Absolutely. And allow me to mention that knowledge is, of course, liberating, as well as it transforms. It brings about subtle change in the way we perceive the kind of world that we are surrounded with, or whatever is happening. I'll quickly request you to touch the final message as is considered Upadesh Panchakam, where there are 40 teachings. We will just take the first stanza of this Upadesh Panchakam. I'll recite it. Basically, I just want us to remember that his message or his teaching also emphasized what you just said, that to immerse in his works, and guru guru's vachanas are also considered like Ved Vakyas. So here, keeping that in mind, I'll just recite the first sloka of the Upadesh Panchakam, and kindly join me because you do it better. So, uh, Vedo
Nityamadhiyatam taduditam karmasvanushtiyatam tenesha dhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam. So the very first instruction is Vedo Nityamadhiyatam. Study the Veda Shastra every day.
Absolutely.
Taduditam karmasvanushtiyatam. So whatever the karmas that are that the Shastra enjoins, perform those karmas.
So study is very, very important, and
Very
that
important. Yeah.
that is scriptures as well as
And study, one more thing, Ashokji, before I forget, study under the guidance or under a teacher. Don't do no self study. You can't do self study here. So he says, even if you are an extremely knowledgeable, even though you are a scholar, don't take the liberty to study by yourself. Even though you are a very knowledgeable person, study under a teacher.
what is the significance of this particular aspect?
Because no, because you need to study under a teacher, because only the teacher knows how to handle the word. The word should be handled properly. If the word is not handled properly, then you will come to your own conclusions. You will come to wrong conclusions. For instance, the word Atma is used in Bhagavad Gita in many occasions. Atmanyev Atmano Bandhu. So that word Atma is not the self there. It's used in the 6th chapter. So one word can have many meanings. So in one context, that word has one meaning. In another context, it has a totally different meaning. So if you don't know how to handle that word, then you will come to a wrong, not only wrong, and erroneous conclusion. So that is not desirable, right? When you study, you must come to the same conclusion which the Acharya has come to. That is the whole intent. So for that, you need to study under the guidance of a teacher.
Very well said. And I'm just remembering initially when we found that you have become so deeply interested, and you are also contemplating, then we started referring to you as resident Acharya, because so we bring that we bring that title back to you, and we'll do series of conversations. But
No,
I
no,
want us to conclude.
no,
I
I'm
want
not an Acharya. I wanted to tell you something, Ashokji. You went into the fourth or fifth sutra. I wanted to make you go a little bit slow, because without knowing the first four sutras, Tattu Samanvayat, you went to Ikshater, that fifth sutra, right? So it has to be a very gradual. He introduced the subject matter, and then what is the means to know that the very first word, so that is used in the very first sutra. So the thing is, you have to study with a proper focus, and under the proper guidance of a teacher, so that you don't miss the way. And I want to tell you, I'm not an Acharya. I'm a student.
I know that's why. No, I was pulling your leg, man. I know you're a student. I no, but some students are so sincere, they appear like acharyas to the other students like me. So from that point of view, I'll still hold you as resident acharya. Acharya. But take it like pulling your legs, man. It's not that serious. But moving to moving towards the concluding part of our conversation this time, and again, as we were mentioning about Mother's Day, and Acharya Shankar broke the tradition, and being a sannyasi, as he promised his mother, he went back at the time while she left her mortal frame. And talk to me about that. And for that, he had to face a lot of opposition. And I
Yeah,
think that tradition still
yeah.
has some
Yeah, so,
imprint
so
there.
the story is that he promised his mother that whenever her final moment arrives, he will be there for her. So he came, and then after he came, she shed her mortal coil. They had a conversation, and he composed that famous poem again. See, these are all in Shankara Vijayam. He composed that famous poem extolling the greatness of the mother. So he did that, and she died very peaceful. She was very happy to see him. She breathed her last. And then when it came time to do her
Last rites.
cremation and other obsequies, so for whatever reason, the Nambudris, the very orthodox people of those times, they refused to come to his help.
The
So
reason was because tradition was that if you are a renunciate, you are a sannyasi, you will not participate in these householders' duties. So
exactly,
they had
exactly.
their logic, which they
Exactly.
were
So
holding very
whatever. So
firmly.
it is said that he took the body to the backyard of his home, and then he prayed to Lord Agni to light it. So the fire was lit with that prayer. So, and to this day, the Nambudris, they are against that, whatever he did. So I mean, these are all these are all social things, social circumstances and events that are dictated by that time. But nevertheless, to me, again, I like to say this: the real genius of the Acharya is in his bhashya. And to know what a genius he was, you should remember Shodashe Kritavan Bhashyam, 16-year-old boy. He's challenging all the darshanikas, all the other what you call schools of thought, all the darshanas, all the other acharyas. 16-year-old boy, we have heard of prodigies. He was the real prodigy of India, and as Indians, as an Indian, as a person of Indian origin, I feel extremely proud that we belong to a what do you call a country which produce people like Acharya Shankara.
Again, no, not disagreeing with you. I'll say that there has been only one Acharya Shankar. There is no likes of him, is what he contributed in multiple ways. So physically also, he did 4 times parikrama of Bharat.
3 or 4 times, they say, yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 times. And of course, he established so many mathas.
Mathas
He
and mandiras,
he
yeah.
also got the vision that such and such vigraha is under the water in this river or pond, and so
Yeah.
there are many stories. So even with the extension of 16 years of life by Ved Vyasji for him, in which he shared what his commentaries were with the masses. So we will go to Acharya Shankara's life with Brahma Sutra a little bit now and then. And I really appreciate what where you are inspired for the intense study, and it brings a lot of fragrance for all of us, Sunilji. So I may sound a little dramatic, but in you I offer my pranams to Swamiji.
Okay.
So with that, yeah, thank you. Thanks
Thank you.
for
I really enjoyed talking to
Jai
you, and
Shankar.
may the blessings of the Acharya be upon all of us, so that we can sincerely study his work, and come to that same understanding whatever he had in his mind when he wrote those commentaries.
Let's conclude by Shankaram, Shankaracharyam, Keshavam, Badarayanam.
शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं
केशवं
बादरायणं
बादरायणं
सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे
सूत्रभाष्यकृतो
भगवन्तौ पुनः
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 ईश्वरो
ईश्वरो
गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने
मूर्तिभेदविभागिने
व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः.
Thank you for being with us. Good wishes for each and every one of you.
Thank you, Ji.
Jai Shankar.
Jai
Namaste.
Shankar.